Long is the studio manager, one of four offices for Norr in Detroit, and she is part of the Global Sustainable Committee that is representing U.S. in that company. Since they are operating in 14 different sectors in 4 countries. So it's an honor to have Laura, since she's also the chair of the USGBC Market Leadership Advisory Council of the Detroit region, and she has worked on multiple LEED projects. And we also are colleagues in Lawrence Tech University. So welcome to the program, Laura.
Yeah.
Appreciate it for joining us. And please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for doing this webinar on LEED. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And Julie, I just have to say, I never knew that Royal Oak, the boundaries look like a dog. So I'll have to remember that. That made me laugh. So thank you for that. What I'd like to talk to you a little about today is LEED. And in this case, LEED in general, but helping you understand how a little intimidating this whole process can be, but there's a very simple way that you can make this process easier for everyone involved. As project managers, I know that you relate. I'm also a project manager, and I understand the difficulties when you work with a team that may not be as well familiar with LEED. And what do you do about that? So I'm going to go talk about a little something. Sorry, I'm going to talk about, it's been a rough day. I'm going to talk about some things that I'd like to pose to you that would allow you to make the process of LEED much simpler. And it starts from the very beginning. So I'm going to talk about the integrated process, but I'd also like to talk to you at the very end of this presentation about the cost of LEED. You know, we talk about metrics all the time. We talk about data, and people ask, well, it's so much more expensive. Well, is it really? Well, I'm going to actually show you some test results and actual data that proves that it really isn't. So I'll walk you through that. So this is a LEED version 4 checklist. This is for B, D, and C. And from this process, you can either achieve certification through a certified, a silver, gold, or platinum rating. And that depends on, out of this total score, how many points you achieve. And there are several credits that can actually give you quite a number of credits. Energy performance is one of them. But what I'd like to do is actually talk about just one credit. And it doesn't even really show up on this checklist. It's right there at the top. It's called the integrated process. And this one credit, if you use the process defined by USGBC in the whole process of LEED, you will solve the majority of the problems you're going to run into in a project when you're under construction or when you're trying to do construction documents. It's going to ensure that everyone included in this process gets a say at the table from day one. So typically, for those of you who are used to the construction process, which I think many of you are, we have the traditional process, which is very linear. But then with the integrated system, it actually becomes more of a holistic bubble. It's a whole systems approach versus that very linear, okay, we're going to go ahead and do design developments, schematic design, construction documents, construction administration, and then it's going to go out and during that process between construction documents and construction administration, it's going to go out for bid. And usually that's when a general contractor, a construction manager comes on board. Well, that's too late, okay? There's so many decisions that a construction consultant, a manager, a general contractor can actually help in determining what are the most cost-effective ways to achieve LEED certification. So this integrated approach is a very comprehensive method that actually allows project team members to look for synergies. And these team members include the owner, the architect and engineers involved in this, but hopefully depending on the design delivery of the project, right? It could be the actual construction management company and the people involved with that. So we'd like to actually bring in every possible player that we can from day one, well before schematic design, to ensure that everyone's input is involved for the very simple reason that with just 1% of a project's first cost are spent, up to 70% of the life cycle impacts are already determined. And to put that a little bit more simply, at only 1% of the completion mark of a typical project, up to 70% of all design directions have been made. That is a little scary. A lot, someone's actually writing on the screen. It's not me. Can you guys see that? Oh, that's interesting. I think it's just a fascinating concept that all of that money is decided upon in that first 1% of completion of project. When the majority, you think, my gosh, the majority of the work is happening the rest of that 99% of the time. But it's just that very 1% that plays a very crucial part. And that's why the integrated process is so important. It ensures that everyone comes to the table at the very beginning. Everything gets hashed out. All the synergies are discussed and determined as to be what's going to be the most effective way forward with the design and what's the most cost effective. So basically, early involvement by all project partners is critical. That includes, like I mentioned before, the building owner, users, and actually if the staff can be involved, we've done some projects with Detroit Public Schools where we actually had facility staff involved in the design of the mechanical systems, which is unheard of. It was great. But the architects, engineers, the construction team, commissioning authority, and the energy modeler, both of whom these last two items, if you're not familiar with them, commissioning authorities and energy modelers are used very heavily in LEED projects. So this process of research, analysis, and workshops, lots of discussions. This what we call an iterative cycle that refines the design solutions. In the best scenario, the research and workshops continue until the project systems are optimized and all reasonable synergies are identified and related strategies associated with all LEED credits are documented and implemented. Typically, I don't like to read text, but I think that is so crucial. It basically defines what this one credit can do for the entire LEED project moving forward. So this is a really good example of that holistic approach, which the integrated process is. This is an actual kind of a charrette drawing that my company did for a school in Scotland. And basically what this drawing does in a nutshell is it documents daylighting opportunities, how we do geothermal, in this case, the raised plenum with heat coming up from the plenum, the natural ventilation, all which is crucial for the health and well-being of the building's inhabitants. But this in a nutshell defines a lot of those systems and synergies that happen at the very beginning of a project. This is why the integrated process is so important. And even though this one credit is optional, you don't have to pursue this. But this one credit can set the tone for the entire LEED project moving forward. I strongly encourage anyone who works on a LEED project to ensure that that integrated process is done. And sometimes it can't. Maybe commissioning authority is brought in too late. The construction manager isn't brought on until the bid process. I mean, there's a whole lot of caveats that can happen in a project, but ensuring that the LEED administrator and the architect and engineers working on a project, along with the owner's assistance and guidance, ensures that this integrated process happens from day one, and that will ensure that you have a very successful LEED project. So how does this integrated process affect the return on investment of a LEED project? And I want to actually share with you some information that I gleaned from a presentation we did with USGBC recently. I was a moderator. Daniel Overby is a LEED fellow and a faculty member at Ball State University. And he was kind of tired of people coming up to him and saying, well, it costs so much money, LEED is so expensive. So what he did is he actually got together with Turner, sorry, and this is a shout out to Harold, just had to get you out there. And with actually students from Ball State University, and the company that he actually works for in his day job is Browning Day. And they basically did an analysis of a building in Indiana. And what they found is that the LEED 4 project costs for basically if you chose to go after certification as a level, that basically costs 1.36% of the project cost. With silver, it was 2.10, gold, 5.96, and then of course platinum was much more expensive at 14.5%. And what I mean by expensive is that that's just a percentage of the construction cost, which is rather quite high, but there's a return on your investment. So for a LEED version 4 certified certified and silver project, the simple payback is under 5 years. So that cost of doing a LEED building, you can get a return on your investment in under 5 years, which is unbelievable. With gold, the return on your investment is 11.2 years. And with platinum, of course, it's over 20 years. So in addition to one of the many things that you can do, and one of the benefits of using the LEED process is that you can significantly reduce the global warming potential of your project, okay? And in particular for this particular project, Indianapolis wanted to achieve a net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050. And buildings account for 66% of Indy's community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. So basically by doing these LEED projects, you can reduce, what are the odds? Your potential reduction in embodied carbon, which is something we're all focusing on now, by 14.3%. And you can reduce your operational carbon, potential reduction in operational carbon. Again, it all depends on how the building is run after it becomes certified. You can reduce it by 23.5%. So what's really interesting is one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with as architects and engineers and anyone who deals with the built environment are codes. And we can only work as fast as the codes dictate. And one of the things I would just like to point out with this slide, which I thought was very interesting, excuse me, I just want to get some water. Through Daniel's research, the biggest obstacle to him was building codes and standards. You know, over time, LEED and the standard it references become more stringent, looking for greater improvements over time. But however, if codes and regulations remain stagnant, then the differential between code minimum and what certification calls for becomes even greater. So right now, as you can see from this chart, we've got LEED that's basically using, and this is, I'm referencing version 4.1 on this. The standard is ASHRAE 90.1 2016. And as you can see, when the study was done, Indiana actually was referencing 90.1 2007. Quite a difference between those two standards. So, you know, following the LEED process, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be well beyond code, which LEED always is. But it really impacts a building, whether you pursue LEED or not, as to what codes the jurisdiction is following. So I just want to stress here in my presentation that there are a lot of ways to achieve LEED, and the most holistic way to improve a building's performance is using the integrated process. While there may be extra fees and those first-time costs associated with LEED, when it becomes LEED certified, there are many benefits, including financial ones, as was just documented. Those return on investments are pretty impressive. Of getting your building certified, it is worth it. And of course, you have always reduce energy usage, reduce carbon emissions, reduce water usage as well. So what I'd like to just leave you with is it's always wise when you're working on a LEED project to ensure that you have someone who is skilled and can speak for the need of the integrated process. It's crucial to ensure that your buildings are the most efficiently designed. And as someone who's worked on many LEED projects over my lifetime as an architect, with Canada's Green Building Council, as well as USGBC's standard, it all depends on who you work with. And having a construction manager, a project manager who's involved, who knows LEED and has LEED experience, will be the most effective project. And ensuring that that integrated process is followed, whether or not you even go after the credit. You know, you can You can do all the the front work and not go after that credit, that one credit. But if you follow the guidelines that are in USGBC's LEED manual, you'll see how effective this can be for you in the long run and improve the overall performance of your building and ensure that those first costs are achieved at a lower rate. And then that return on investment, which is a life cycle cost that Patrick was talking about in his presentation, will be seen and much more easily so. So the fact that you can get a certified building and a silver building with a return on your investment in 5 years is proof that LEED can be a successful and cost-effective way to make a green building.